1, 2, 3, 4.
Screen time, screen time, screen time, screen time.
It's my screen time too.
Screen time, screen time.
Hello, and welcome to It's My Screen Time Too, the podcast where two moms review the best and worst in children's programming, from Netflix reboots and YouTube shorts to Disney classics and Pixar blockbusters. We watch, you listen. Find out what you can tolerate watching for family movie night, what to avoid altogether, and what you'll want to watch alone voluntarily. I'm Deborah.
And I'm Katie.
And I have 3 kids. Tony is 13 and Libby and Nate are 10.
And I have 2 kids. Jay is 8 and Kenny is 5. They're pretty adorable, aren't they?
They are.
Well, we like to tell a quick story at the top of every episode about how awesome or occasionally awful our kids are, because in addition to being witty and incisive pop culture consumers, we're moms too, and we just like to get that stuff out of the way up front. So, Deborah, what have your kids been up to?
Okay, this story is less adorbs and more occasionally awful, because there was like a school PTA fundraiser where if you go to this neighborhood restaurant on a specific night between the hours of like 4:15 to 6:30 or something, they'll donate like $1 to the PTA. And Nate really wanted to go to it, even though he's not crazy about this restaurant. And we were like, okay, fine, whatever. We'll be a part of our community. And then at the last minute, he decided he didn't want to go, which actually made things a lot easier. But I didn't have a meal plan because my plan was restaurant. So I was like, fine, I'm not going to force you to go to this fundraiser that is not even really worth it. So then I started making like grilled cheese, because do you do most of the meal planning and cooking at your house, or do you share it with Kevin?
I do the majority of it.
Same. And I've explained that the kitchen is not a restaurant so many times, but this was like a very good actual natural consequence, because Nate was like, I don't really want grilled cheese. And I was like, well, I don't have a plan. And he was like crestfallen. His face just fell. And at first I was kind of insulted, but then I was like, this is actually a good lesson in how you have to think about what you're going to eat, like at least a couple of hours before the meal if you want to have something specific, right?
Isn't it hard to remind yourself of that when like the only feedback you get is coming from the kids who are just like overwhelmingly disappointed about a thing?
Anyway, this is not a super great story so much as it is an excuse for me to rant about being the main meal planner that often disappoints my family. What have your kids been up to?
Well, just to keep the tone light, you know how parenting is an increasing acceptance of your own irrelevance? And also, you know, a good way to phrase that would be when your kids are really little, a big part of what you do in the day-to-day is put together really big, complicated toys, and it's annoying. But this morning before school, Kenny runs out of the playroom and he had opened up a box of Plus Plus. Do you know what those things are? Your kids are probably too old, but they're like little connecting pieces that look like 2 plus signs connected together. That's why they're called Plus Plus, but you can use them to build all sorts of things. So this particular box was a Plus Plus car, and it came with some wheels that weren't made of the Plus Plus material because they needed something without corners. Okay, this is a long start to this story. Kenny comes out of the playroom. He says, Dad, Mom, I need help putting together these wheels. Dad's like fiddling with it, can't quite figure it out. Kenny's like backseat driving the whole situation. No, Dad, that's not what I meant. That's not how you put it together. What are you doing? Dad's getting increasingly frustrated because it's just not working. And finally, he's like, I don't know how to put this together. Kenny's not even upset. He's like, you clearly don't know how to put it together. He goes away back to the playroom. Right before we get in the car to go to school, Jay comes out and is like, oh yeah, I put that wheel together for Kenny.
Oh,
like no big
yay.
deal. Because sometimes the youth understand things better than us olds. And I just thought, A, it was
Nice.
sweet of him to do for his brother, and B,
Yeah.
it was pretty funny that an 8-year-old bested two college educated adults on how to put together a child's toy. So, way to go, Jay.
It's just the first of so many.
Uh-huh.
We don't even know.
All right, let's talk screen time in the news, shall we?
Let's do it.
So today we're discussing an August 24th article from the New York Times by Alexis Solosky with the headline, Honey, I Blew Up the Family Film. This is subject matter that we have treaded somewhat before. In fact, in the beginning of the article, she does cite an article by Matt Singer that we talked about in a previous Screen Time in the News, just about how few kids' movies are being released into theaters these days. Some of the top bullet points I took away were the fact that only 12 family movies were scheduled for wide theatrical releases in 2023, which is
Mm-hmm.
half as many as in 2019, but box office numbers from those movies are on pace to match pre-pandemic levels anyway. So what is the incentive to do more if like the small quantity that you're doing is making as much money? Show business is a business. why
Right.
why would you put more effort into doing more? She goes on to voice the familiar complaint that even the movies that are coming out have what she calls a quote lowest common denominator feel and are based on big IP. She talks about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie, the upcoming Paw Patrol movie sequel, which, side note, we're kind of excited about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember what else she said was on that list of big IP projects. And then she goes on to lament the fact that the G rating is basically disappearing. It was doing so even before the pandemic. Even the Paw Patrol movie that's coming out is rated PG.
Mm-hmm.
She then goes on to talk about reasons why family movies just feel less essential these days. She discusses the shift to animation and CGI since the turn of the 21st century and how these computer generated images are just inherently less charming and relatable to kids. So they don't necessarily form the same emotional bonds to the movies as we may have when we were seeing, the puppet E.T. on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would argue, any of the characters from the Neverending Story.
Right.
She talks about the wider death of the mid-budget movie as a bad sign for family movies, which, yes, we're seeing less of those mid-budget movies getting made. And she says we need to make more movies that will stick with kids. How do we do that when there's so little incentive in the marketplace? She doesn't really give much guidance in terms of that. She does say that there's a little hope on the horizon. She mentions Greta Gerwig's Little Women, which I would argue not really a family film in the way we're discussing it. She
Mm-hmm.
mentions Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which I would argue maybe a more controversial hot take that wasn't really a family movie at all. And then she mentions the glorious both glorious Paddington movies as examples of the fact that good family movies are still being made. She voices the familiar refrain that we need to trust kids to experience and relate to emotionally complex stories, and that if Hollywood can do that, we can potentially see a resurgence of good quality family movies moving forward. What did you think of this article?
I had some questions. I had some minor quibbles. I mean, we did discuss that Screen Crush article back in April. I thought that was maybe a little better take on this. And I wanted to see, I found that stat kind of hard to believe that there were 30 G movies in 2003.
Yeah.
But then I looked and I found a list of all the movies that came out in 2003, and I didn't like parse it for ratings because there wasn't a column on ratings, but I guess I believe that. I'm curious, like, what were the numbers for G-rated movies in like 1985 and 1995,
Mm-hmm.
just for comparison, because it's sometimes when people are like, my childhood was so much better than kids have it now, like they're looking at the past through very rose-colored lenses that might not be true. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, sure, I would love to see more G-rated movies at the theater, and I would have loved more G-rated movies like 10 years ago, especially, but there's also a lot of content.
Yeah.
And I think maybe like the distribution has changed even more than the number of movies coming out, because there are so many movies like those Disney ones that you always will make us watch every summer, Katie.
Sorry.
No, I love those, but those aren't in the theater. They're probably not G, but there's just there are a lot of kids movies out there.
And the content landscape is shifting. Even she
Mhm.
seems to get a little caught up in the muddiness of this when she mentions things like Pinocchio, which wasn't even a theatrically released movie. And then she talks about
Mhm.
Greta Gerwig's, hopefully, knock on wood, upcoming Narnia movies. That'll also be a Netflix property. So the means of distribution are changing. I totally understand her lament that she wants to solidify the theatrical experience in her children's hearts as something special and meaningful.
Mhm.
And I also understand Matt Singer's point that there weren't enough movies for a period of time.
Mhm.
But I also believe that I can instill in my kids the idea that the theatrical experience is special and awesome by going to, you know, 6 movies a year. Like I'm just not one of those parents that needs to take them every weekend, I guess. So that made her argument feel a little flimsy to me.
Yes, and one of the points that she makes is that if they watch a movie as a family at home, she's scrolling on her phone or doing dishes, which if you make it like an appointment and you leave your phone in another room, you are forced to watch the movie with your kids, which
Yeah.
is hard, maybe, but you can do it.
Yeah, that is a choice that she is making. You can't
Yeah.
blame it on the lack of movies in the theaters.
Right, right. So overall, I see her point, but I don't know. I didn't think that the argument was the best way of making that point.
In a way, it had echoes to me of the Wall Street Journal article we talked about last week, in the sort of
Mm-hmm.
kids these days tone of it, just
Yes.
kind of missing the whole point entirely.
Yeah, totally.
That's not to say that we don't look forward to good, beautiful, complex children's movies getting made. Please bring them on. If we can make them happen, we're happy to watch them for sure.
Yes. I think I already put Migration on our watch list. I'm excited for that one. That
Well,
looks
yeah,
good.
we know you're a White Lotus person.
Yes.
All right. Do you want to move on to, well, do we have any general news?
I don't. Do you have any follow-up?
I thought we could probably stand to make a mention, even though this episode won't come out for another week. But it does look, knock on wood again, like the
Yeah.
writer's strike might finally be resolved. So we will hopefully be getting some new content before too long, assuming that the industry trains its sights on the actors now and does some work to get that strike resolved. It's a hopeful sign. At least from what we're hearing now, they're very pleased with the deal they've been able to make. So that's very good news.
Super good news. Yay.
All right, should we
Today,
move on to our topic for the day?
yes, we are talking about Snoopy Presents One of a Kind Marcie, which is a TV special on Apple TV Plus and part of the Snoopy Presents series of specials that began in 2021 with Snoopy Presents for Auld Lang Syne. There have been a total of 5 installments so far, with at least one more slated for 2024. It clocks in at a cool 39 minutes. Apple landed the rights to air new Peanuts content, in 2018. If you've never heard of Peanuts before, it was first developed as a comic strip by artist Charles Schulz in 1950.
Hey, Deborah, you can't accuse me of not doing my research for these rundowns, okay? Yes, I know the world knows what Peanuts is. Okay, go on.
No, it would be funny if there was somebody listening this was their first introduction to it. Okay, this was directed by Raymond Percy. He's directed two previous Snoopy Presents specials for Apple that were released last year, Lucy's School and It's the Small Things, Charlie Brown. The special was written by Betsy Walters, who is no stranger to the Snoopyverse. She also wrote for the other two Peanuts-inspired shows, The Snoopy Show and Snoopy in Space. It was produced by Canadian animation studio Wild Brain. And in summary, Marcie realizes that even as a quiet introvert, she can still help her friends and her community in big ways. Why did we pick it? Well, Apple has been making new Peanuts content for a while, and we covered the Snoopy Show briefly in a lightning round episode back in 2022, and it's time for us to cover this in more depth.
All right.
What did you think? Do you want to kick off our general thoughts?
Sure, let's do it. Well, first of all, can you kind of run me through a little bit your history with Peanuts? Like, were you a diehard Peanuts fan growing up? Did you read the comics? Have you brought that forward with your kids? Where do you land? Because it's such a long and storied brand.
Yes, and there's a big Minnesota connection. And so when I was like a preteen and adolescent, Camp Snoopy was the amusement park at the Mall of America. And then there were also, I don't know what it's called, but there were like all these statues of Snoopy all around the Minnesota capital, St. Paul, like in parks and neighborhoods. I don't know like why, but
was it like an
it
art,
was kind of like
an art installation thing, like with the cows in Madison?
Just like the cows in Madison, like each one was designed, it was like the same statue, but each one was like painted differently by a different artist.
I like that. That's cute.
And sometimes you'll still spy them in random places. Right now at the Minnesota Historical Society, there's like a big year-long Charles Schulz exhibit.
Oh.
That I haven't been to yet, but I've got the rest of 2024 to go too, I think. My kids really like reading the Peanuts comics. I mean, I wasn't a big reader of the comics, but like, of course, the holiday specials loom large. And I'm a big Vince Guaraldi fan. I love playing the piano music from Peanuts, especially the Christmas ones.
Oh, yeah. Some of those songs are just iconic.
How about you? What's your background with the Peanuts verse?
Well, as a little kid, I always read the weekly strip in the Sunday Funnies. But it was really back in the time when your experience was just dependent on which VHS tapes your parents had. So really the only one that I watched with any frequency was, like Snoopy Come Home. Snoopy Come Home. So it wasn't even one of the holiday ones, but just because it was present in our limited video library, I watched it a lot, and that was my main touch point for the Peanuts franchise. So I didn't really introduce it to my kids. I think I wrote either on one of our socials or wherever we were posting things that I only recently shared like the Great Pumpkin and the Christmas episodes with my kids like within the past couple of years. So they definitely weren't on like a repeat watch for our family at all. Not because I dislike them, but just because it's not what I reach for in my nostalgic holiday brain. So I was curious to go into this and see if I would feel any connection with the content, if I would have any feelings about how the new stuff is carrying on the legacy of the old stuff, or if because my own level of familiarity was so basic, if it would just kind of wash over me. So with that in mind, Did you like it?
I did like it. I liked it more than I thought I would, actually.
Yeah.
How about you?
We talked last week about how you have to be in the appropriate headspace to do this work, but like, give me a special about the ways introverts are awesome. Like, that is for me, right? Like,
Totally,
regardless,
totally.
regardless of the Peanuts angle, if you had just
Mm-hmm.
given me that summary, I would have been on board with giving it a try. And I thought it was really charming.
Yeah, I didn't know Marcie at all. And if I had been quizzed on, like, name as many Peanuts characters as you can, I would not have named Marcie. She was not on my radar at all.
Marcy and Peppermint Patty featured pretty heavily in Snoopy Come Home, so I was
Okay, got
familiar with them and their
it.
toxic friendship dynamic.
Yes, sir.
Don't call me sir, but then also still do everything I ask of you. All right, speaking of characters, what did you think of the casting characters? Was there anyone you particularly loved or hated?
Lucy's hard to take generally, but I thought that she was actually portrayed in as charming a light as she could be in this
Mm-hmm.
one. In the like originals, she's really a shrew, but I think that they are treating her with a little bit more I don't know what's like more depth, better range, like less pigeonholing her in that shrew spot. I mean, I Charlie Brown is in it and he's charming, but it's really more like a cameo part of
Mm-hmm.
his.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always want more Snoopy and Woodstock. I think I
Yeah.
really just want to watch Snoopy Woodstock antics as though they're like the Warner Brothers Roadrunner
Yeah.
wordless animation.
Well, remind me because our lightning round was so long ago. Is that what the Snoopy show is? Does it feature Snoopy more heavily?
I thought it was more like not really a sketch comedy, but more like a variety show.
Okay.
Less like 30 minutes of, or even two 15-minute plots. But it's been a long time, so I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I put you on
But
the
there
spot with
was
that one.
more Snoopy and Woodstock in that.
Yeah,
Because this
Snoopy
was
and
like probably like 4 minutes out of the 39 minutes.
yes, very little. Although there was a nice bit of business in the beginning where Woodstock was just taking a pleasant little bath in the bird bath, enjoying some time to himself, and three other birds came and sat in the bird bath and started splashing him, and he just looked so charmingly put out. Again, this whole thing was just really for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Peppermint Patty remains awful and oblivious, yes.
Yes.
Had you ever seen young Carlin and his band of underclassmen before?
So who are they in the
I had
originals?
never seen them before, but I thought Carlin was so lovely.
I liked Carlin a lot, but I felt like I had like a gap in my memory. But maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know if they're a new creation. I lack the depth of Peanuts lore knowledge.
Uh yeah, really cute character.
I need to just ask something about your suspension of disbelief. With the
Okay.
caveat that I know this is a children's show. But even when I was young and watching Snoopy Come Home, the whole conceit that Peppermint Patty just refers to Snoopy as the kid with the big nose and seems to think that he is another child always rubs me the wrong way.
Is that a bit that Patty does?
I don't know
Or
that she ever officially recognizes that he is in fact a dog.
is she just supposed to be so self-absorbed that she can't even understand that he's canine?
Yeah, that's the right take on it, I think. That's
Okay.
good. I like that. Any other characters you wanted to highlight?
It does seem, I think one of my complaints from the Snoopy show, and maybe I don't know if it was Snoopy show or just the originals, but like there aren't a lot of characters of color in the Snoopy verse. But I thought that like the crowd scenes were more diversified than the originals, which is good. Oh, I also wanted there more wah, wah.
Yes.
teacher voices. There was not a lot of that. And that, to me, is one of the things that I thought was funniest watching them as a kid.
Yes, of course. Uh-huh.
Hmm.
Well, what about the look of the movie and the animation? How did you think this stood up in comparison to the holiday specials and the various iterations of Peanuts we've known in the past?
I thought it was well done. I don't think it's hand drawn, but it has a lot of the same feel of the old timey ones.
I just need to highlight all of the scenes that took place within Marcie's headspace when she was panicking
Hmm.
about things, spiraling about what she was supposed to do or what other people's expectations of her would be. It got all scribbly, and it was just a really great depiction of a crowded mind that also felt charmingly analog. I liked that a lot.
Those were really well done. I feel like they probably had like consultants on the writing staff to get like the perspective of a true introvert down.
Yes, it seems like Apple is being very intentional and careful with its continuation of this IP. And it's being
Yeah.
very respectful of the long history that came before. It makes, I think, an interesting contrast to what Disney is flailing around with the Muppets. like,
Yeah.
there doesn't seem to be much consideration for the things that made the Muppets charming and relatable and successful in the first place. Whereas it seems like Apple is really trying hard to incorporate and be respectful of those things while
Hmm.
telling some new stories in some ways that it maybe wouldn't have occurred to us to tell stories in the past.
I think there are a couple of Schultzes listed as producers.
Okay.
I wonder if part of the contract is sensitive treatment of
Mm-hmm.
the primary intellectual property, possibly.
Because I don't think it was at all an entire sale of the intellectual property. I think it's really specific to you have the broadcast rights to old Peanuts and
Mm,
you have the rights to create new animated shows. In that sense, I think the Disney deal is different where they can do whatever
sure.
the heck they want with the Muppets.
Okay. And they are failing
Yeah, in
the
my humble
Muppets.
opinion, yes.
Failing the Jim Henson legacy.
hmm What did you think about the writing?
I thought the whole time that we were going for this trajectory of like a very dubious lesson because it seems like, okay, so they're portraying Marcie as doing all these good, like, sort of stealth acts of kindness for the betterment of the community. Like, Marcie comes up with an idea for how the cafeteria can stop running out of pizza on pizza day, disappointing like the last third of kids at the end of the line, which Marcie is always at the end of the line because Marcie is kind of a doormat and will let everybody else go before her. But then she comes up with this good idea. You see how she's working her magic like behind the scenes the whole time. And I thought that they were going to make it into something like how like a wallflower behind the scenes person should get over it and accept a leadership position and notoriety that they actually don't want because like she doesn't want to speak in public, she doesn't want to be the face of anything. So I was worried that it was going to that, but then it's actually like really perfect resolution in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion.
So affirming.
The dialogue is so good. Like before Marcie makes like the final speech, she advocates for herself and she's like, I just need a few minutes alone, which is not too much to ask. And she gets it and she advocates for herself. I thought that was really good. And then I think that final speech said something like the world needs all kinds of people. And it was like a little bit of a speech on behalf of behind the scenes people.
Mm-hmm.
social introverts. It was good. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. I I think again what we were saying about being conscious of the Peanuts legacy, I think the writing was very tonally in line with kind of the more adult sensibility of
Mm-hmm.
the early Peanuts content. And I don't, adult sensibility, when we talk about it, always is humor related, right? But in this case, it is not. It is
Right.
sadness, the adult feeling of sadness, and the kind of constant feeling of self doubt and the fleeting nature of success. Like these are all really weighty things that weigh heavy on the hearts of adults that are just translated in this beautiful way for children that I I found to be really successful. And I will go a long way to say that maybe it's just because the subject matter was very near and dear to my heart, being an introvert myself. But I just thought it was a lovely tone that we don't
Mm-hmm.
often see in children's media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very, very nice. And it great message and great way of doing it. And it also did not feel like an after school
No.
special,
Mm-mm.
like after school special. It wasn't treacly, and it could easily have gone in that
Yes.
direction.
Yes, you're exactly right. What about the music? Talk to me about the use of the noodly jazz.
I tried to look not very hard to find out if it was really Vince Guaraldi or not. I mean, it sounds like it is. I thought it was great. I always think the Peanuts music is really fun.
Yeah, the fact that so much of this storyline takes place internally to Marcie and everything is so contemplative, it feels like a really good setting for the kind of, like I said, noodly jazz that's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily really going anywhere. It's just traveling around and around, and it fit really well with the subject matter, I thought.
Mm-hmm. And they also have who's the piano playing kid, the blonde kid?
Schroeder.
Yeah, he also has a little moment, which was nice.
Hmm.
He was somebody I enjoyed seeing, who I also probably wouldn't have named if I had to come up with.
How do I know all their names?
I don't know. Good job, Katie.
Thank you. What about the structure and length? We've got like a mid-length special, which is not super common these days.
I liked it. I mean, I think I watched a lot of the Snoopy specials in elementary school because they are kind of the perfect length. They're either like around an hour or under an hour, which is a good length to like end out the school day on the day before winter break. It made me want to watch all the other specials. Why have we been sleeping on
I
these?
know, right? Because just looking at the title of that first Snoopy Presents, Auld Lang Syne, so often holidays come and we're like, well, what do we got for New Year's content for the kids? There's not much. So it feels like
Mm-hmm.
it feels good that they're filling this niche, and if everything is as high quality as I've seen from Marcie, I'm excited to watch it.
And I like these. They're a great length for like a Sunday night when you want to have like a little downtime, but you can't really commit to a movie length thing. It's not a TV series that you then have to sign up for watching 10 or 20 episodes. For 39 minutes, I can easily refrain from doing the dishes and I can put down my phone and just have a mini movie night with the family.
I also think when you're dealing with something that's more contemplative in tone and doesn't have a lot of action sequences or a lot of jokes, it
Yeah.
helps to have this length.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Totally.
what I was thinking of is another Apple property. Did you happen to watch The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it was a animated version of a very successful children's book. It is a bit similar subject matter wise in terms of like it's important to accept every type of person and we all have value and you can have
Sure.
big feelings and work through them and that's fine. And I wanted to write when I was taking notes for this episode, Marcie was such a better length for this like kind of contemplative weighty subject matter than The
Mm-hmm.
Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And then I looked up the length and that was only 32 minutes. So I guess this was just flat out better. Like,
Yeah, if it was shorter and felt longer, that's not good.
yeah. So if I would say if I were choosing between the two, I would do this over that. But the
Good.
other one won an Oscar, I think. So maybe my taste is bad.
What adult movie or show does this compare to?
I had two thoughts. One
Mm-hmm.
was the lovely Somebody Somewhere, which is a show all about
Mm,
how the small people can make the big differences, right? And whether that means making a
mm-hmm.
difference to just one person or making a difference in a whole community, it's important. So I thought of that. And then I thought of the not for grown-ups but also not for children TV series Veronica Mars, and how Veronica Mars was just like, whatever, I'm going to do it my own way, and I don't want to
Mm,
subscribe to your like definitions of what it means to help people. This is how I'm going to do it. And it made me want to do a Veronica Mars rewatch.
mm-hmm. Nice.
How about you?
I I thought of Shrinking,
I have not
another
watched
Apple.
it.
Oh, it's really good. And I think I wrote that down early when I was watching because I thought we were going in like a social anxiety type of direction when really it's actually they let Marcy keep her temperament.
Uh-huh.
But Shrinking kind of deals with mental health in a really, I don't know, they blend like the lightheartedness with the serious subject matter really well.
Mm-hmm. I have to apologize for the lawnmower noise behind me. This is Florida. There is never a time when someone is not mowing their lawn in my
I
vicinity.
can't hear it. It's
Okay, good,
fine.
good, good.
Were you able to cast the gritty HBO reboot?
So we finally finished the second season of Foundation, which we're always a little late. Do you watch that series at all?
What's it on?
It's on Apple.
Okay. Okay. This is something I need to look at, I think.
So it's kind of weird because every season and sometimes internally within a season, they do big time jumps. So you jettison a healthy chunk of the cast that you've just been
Mm-hmm.
spending time getting attached to. So at the end of the season, I wanted to give some work to some people from the Foundation cast that I like quite a bit. So I thought that Isabella Laughlin, who plays Brother Constant in season 2 of Foundation, could be Marcie because she
Mm-hmm.
has the same energy of like, maybe what I am doing isn't what you would do in this situation, but that doesn't make it less valid.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I just think she's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also cast Peppermint Patty to be Leah Harvey, who plays Salvor Hardin on Foundation. She has this brash personality, and I would just like to see her get to be like totally self absorbed. I think that would be really great. How about you? Who did you cast?
I cast Kate McKinnon as Peppermint Patty
Mm-hmm.
because
Love
she would
it.
do gruff really well in that Peppermint Patty way. I also cast Reese Witherspoon as Lucy.
Oh, yeah.
Lucy, I think, probably inspired Tracy Flick, right? And
There's definitely some common DNA there.
yeah, and then okay, this is perfect casting. As Marcy, I would cast Aparna Nancherla. She just has a book out about like her social anxiety and depression and being a performer. And I haven't read it, but I listened to the Fresh Air interview and it sounds really good. And I think she could play Marcy with a lot of sensitivity.
Okay, I like this. It's funny because I don't think of her in that context because she's so funny and vibrant every time I encounter her content.
She is. She's hilarious, but also I think she's like barely holding it together
Oh,
sometimes.
but. Oh.
Yeah. And then I tried to think of a bald actor to cast as Charlie Brown, and I don't think there are bald actors anymore.
But it's dudes. They can just shave their head and grow hair back 20 minutes later.
That's true. Are there any bald guys anymore?
Here's the bigger question. Is there an actor that you would love to see just shave their head for a quick sec?
Ooh, I can probably come up with several.
All right, I'm going to ask you next time.
Okay.
This will be our follow-up segment. Which actors do we want to see shave their heads for a role?
Was it better when we were kids?
There was so much Peanuts content, and honestly, I know now they say that some of those specials were problematic, but I don't know them well enough to just reach back in my brain and say which ones were and which ones weren't. So I think I love that the Peanuts is evenly spread across the bread of history. What do you think?
I feel like it was very similar. This is very much in the vein of the Peanuts specials that we remember in the way that we remember them. We don't remember them as problematic. But I haven't watched any of them in a long time. Okay, would you ever watch this alone voluntarily?
I wanted to say no because I would feel fine watching it with my kids, but then I started to think if I can think of any content that's actively made for grown-ups that I find to be this affirming of my own particular idiosyncrasies, and I can't. So I guess my answer is maybe. How about you?
I mean, if I can't talk my kids into watching the other specials, I would definitely watch them alone voluntarily. But I think this would be great family content. So hopefully they'll deign to view these with me.
Yes, well, that brings us in a natural segue to 10 seconds on whether or not this is good for our kids. What do you think?
I thought it was really well done and very charming. So, yes, I think it's good for our kids.
I agree on all of those points. I will also say that I think it's nice to give my kids like a break from the frenetic pace of a lot of other children's programming. Yeah. So while they were like up and down while this was going on and they weren't necessarily rapt and paying attention to every up and down of the plot, like they stayed in the room. They didn't leave. So I count that as a win.
Nice.
Ratings?
4.5 stars, I think.
Yeah, I would go 4.5. What do you think? See it or skip it?
Definitely see it.
Definitely see it. I'm so proud of you, Apple. I don't know if you need my affirmations. You probably don't, but you seem to be doing really good with this property that people love, and you're not screwing it up. And for that, I'm grateful.
I think Apple is definitely an underrated streamer for family/kids content.
Agreed.
It doesn't have as much as like Disney or Netflix, but what it does have is really good.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to this episode of It's My Screen Time Too. If you enjoyed our show today, please share it with someone you think might enjoy it too. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and occasionally Twitter at MyScreenTime2, or send an email to myscreentime2@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your YouTube suggestions, article recommendations, or general comments about the show. Our website is MyScreenTime2, where you can subscribe to our newsletter. Our theme music was composed and performed by Deborah and her adorable children, and our podcast is produced by me, Katie. You can hear more from us on our other podcast, Spock Talk, where we discuss the life and legacy of Dr. Benjamin Spock. Tune in next time for more real talk about the movies and TV we watch with our kids because we have to, and sometimes because we like to. Bye.
Screen time.
Bye.
Screen time. Screen time.